What were you thinking? I hate that question. I always ask it usually after some monumentally stupid thing I've just done, and my answer is always the same. I don't know. I wasn't thinking. Well, it turns out I was. I just wasn't thinking well. Now, I created this workshop, Thinking About Thinking, 3 keys to get beyond either or thinking, partly for myself. I wanted to think better. Now, it turns out the 3 keys are quite simple. I have to understand my mind, I have to know my bubble, and I have to learn to ask more critical questions. Now, the first one, the idea of asking questions. What was I thinking? No. More important question is, how was I thinking? How was I thinking? Turns out psychologists have a great way of breaking down how we think that's very simple. It's called hot cognition and cold cognition. And we do it all the time. Hot cognition is just like it sounds. It's hot, it's quick, it's immediate. It's in the spur of the moment. It's unpassionate, it's emotional. Cold thinking, on the other hand, is cool. It's rational, it's reasonable, it's slow, it takes more time. It turns out we need both. But in this society, we are hard-pressed to do a lot more hot thinking so that we'll buy some doodad we don't need, or we'll buy into some political plan that's really quite spurious, but we'll do it because we're hot thinking in the moment, going at it, and we didn't take time to cold think it. We need to find a balance between the two. Another thing we need to do is find out why we think the way we do. It turns out that we have what's called a bubble, and that bubble is the entire makeup of our lives. It's what we were trained to do, what we were taught to do, what we're genetically predisposed to do. It's what we learned to do through experience. It's what our friends told us to do. And often our bad friends told us to do the wrong thing. It's what our parents tried to get us to do. All of those things form that bubble through which we look out at the world. And that bubble is sometimes very incorrect. Now, it turns out scientists have a way of looking at it that I think is quite fascinating. It's called cognitive bias. It turns out we do so many stupid things so often that they've actually got lists of them. There's over 200 cognitive bias, which is just wrong ways of thinking. One is frozen heuristics. That's seeing something the same way every time we look at it. And when a changing environment like we're going through, to see the same thing the same way is often a mistake. Another one is bandwagon bias. Now, bandwagon thinking is where you just sort of go, oh, I'm going along with that. We see that in politics all the time. Another one is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is we would rather accept what we think we already know than be informed of something that we don't know. I don't do that very often, of course. Yes, I do. Anyway, the point is, those cognitive bias, and there are a lot of them, need to be explored if we're to think properly. And we need to ask the critical questions. Am I hot thinking or cold thinking? Am I biased thinking? And one of the bias is binary thinking, which is the either or question. We get so pressed for time that we think there's either yes or no. There's either this or that. It's either black or white. And you know what? It never is. There's always shades of gray. I could have subtitled this 50 Shades of Gray, but that title's already taken. Anyway, the point is, we need the 3 keys to get to good critical thinking and get us beyond either or, and really help us think about thinking. Psychologists call that metacognition, and I've never met a cognition I didn't like. Anyway, it'll help you get beyond the question, what was I thinking? And on to the answer. Well, I was thinking this, and I was thinking that for the following reasons. That's what I do now, sometimes. Quite often, when I think of it.